Excellencies, dignitaries, experts, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who's joining from different time zones. Respected Shri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat Ji, Honorable Minister of Jal Shakti, Government of India, and other dignitaries, eminent speakers, experts, and online audience. I welcome you all to this high-level policy dialogue on deciphering interlinkages of SDG6 through multi-sector partnerships. An official virtual side event of High Level Political Forum 2023 taking place in New York from 10th July to 19th July. This event is organized by India Water Foundation and is supported by UNEP, CBD, UNESCAPE, IHE Delft, Institute of Water Education, JICA, and IUCN. It's a pleasure to have you all here. The Sustainable Development Agenda aims to transform the world, eradicate poverty, and achieve sustainable development by 2030 worldwide, ensuring that no one is left behind. This comprehensive and boldest agenda for humanity cannot be realized without increased and effective cooperation of all sectors at all levels. Water is at the core of sustainable development. Access to safe water, sanitation, and hygiene is the most basic human need for health and well-being. Some of the most important challenges around water include lack of access to clean sources and proper sanitation, efficient wastewater treatment, as well as building resilience mechanisms against floods and droughts. All of these are further exacerbated due to climate change and intensified. Increasing global temperatures, unpredictable precipitation patterns, and intensified weather events. Global cooperation involving a diversified stakeholder portfolio, ranging from international finance institutions to private corporations to development aid organizations and NGOs, helps to deliver innovative solutions that build sustainable and resilient economies worldwide. 2023 has also been declared the year of accelerating change through partnerships and cooperation. To analyze the same, we have organized this event, bringing together leaders and experts from across sectors and multidimensional organizations to deliberate and serve as a space for discussing recommendations and gather support for joint action towards deciphering interlinkages of SDG6 and how multi-sector partnerships are imperative to define these linkages. To initiate this session, I request Dr. Arvind Kumar, President, India Water Foundation, to set up the tone for this event. Dr. Arvind Kumar is a strategist and key influencer in development sector with more than 28 years of experience as an author, columnist, water activist, and specializes in concepts like ecosystem-based adaptation, water energy food nexus with specific emphasis on transversal approach of interlinkages between water, environment, and SDGs. Dr. Arvind Kumar, please.
Thank you, Seta. Shri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, Union Minister of Jal Shakti, Government of India. Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, Director General, World Health Organization. Ms. Susan Garden, Director, Ecosystem Division, UN Environment Program. Mr. David Copper, Acting Executive Secretary, Convention of Biological Diversity. Dr. Satya Tripathi, Secretary General, Global Alliance for Sustainable Planet. Dr. Eddie Moores, IHE Delft, Institute of Water Education. Dr. Rajan Sudesh Ratna, Deputy Head and Senior Economic Affair Officer, United Nations, UNESCAP and SSW Office. Dr. Katsu Matsumo, Director General, Japan International Cooperation Agency. Dr. Mark Smith, Director General, International Water Institute, and Mr. Vishwanath Ranjan Sinha, Program Officer, Water and Wetlands, IUCN. So good evening to you all, and as President of India Water Foundation, I welcome you all to this high-level policy dialogue. Today, we have all assembled here to deliberate on the interlinkages of SDG6 through multi-sector partnerships. SDG is a foundation of life and livelihoods and is key to sustainable development. Successful implementation of SDG goal as a whole will serve as a foundation for achieve of most of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. At HLPF 2030, one of the SDG underlines is the SDG6, and there will be a deliberations on the same. Water is not just a sector, but it is a development connector and as economic indicator. It is a catalyst which links social, economic, and environmental SDGs and is a gateway of bridging the gaps between the socio-economic and environmental pillars of the sustainable development. Water is needed across all sectors to provide food, energy, combat climate change, provide healthy ecosystem services, and more. But with growing demand of water and mounting pressures from linked sectors, water resources are severely stressed. According to the recent research carried out by the UNEP, if we see globally, a fifth of the world's river basins are experiencing dramatic fluctuations in the water availability. And 2.3 billion people are living in countries categorized as water stressed, including 721 million in areas where the water situation is critical. So it's irrespective of the fact that water is a major driving force behind most of these goals, it is fast becoming a pressing societal and geopolitical issue with inadequate progress, and this is especially worrying when considering the high cross-sectoral character of water goal. Even at UN 2030 Water Conference, a key outcomes was the Water Action Agenda, which is nothing but a collection of all water-related voluntary commitments. The thoughts, ideas, and the actions stemming from the conference can go beyond the visibility of water by acting as a wake-up call for all national and international authorities. That is the reason coordination within the water sector with all other sectors need to be prioritized and strengthened. We have to identify opportunities to integrate water management into sectoral programs and planning processes, such as climate change, agriculture, poverty reduction, and establish formal coordination mechanisms which clear institution mandates, responsibilities, and incentives for coordination. The governments across the world are accelerating action towards achieving Goal 6, but it is not possible through government intervention alone. Honorable Minister of Jal Shakti, Government of India shall highlight the various missions and initiatives started by Government of India, which were successful only because of the partnerships and participatory approach. Other speakers shall highlight the tremendous efforts being taken at level of the UN agency, international organization, institutes, funding organization, etc. in the realm of Goal 6. I'm sure we will be able to identify some concrete recommendation through this dialogue. The information can be baseline for informing cross-sectoral policy making. Water, energy, agri-food, environmental and waste sectors cannot be seen in silos. The qualitative and quantitative energy, water, food nexus framework offers potential for evaluating the direct and indirect imbibed water in food production to capture the complex series of direct and indirect interlinkages between water, energy, food systems. Well-designed plans should be customized as per contemporary need in an integrated manner, incorporating transversality approach by interlinking vertical linkages between water, food, energy nexus, and ecosystem-based adaptation approach with horizontal indicators like health, education, agriculture, gender, etc. And they must be weighed against efficiency, effectiveness, and equity, affirming the need for water and sanitation utilities to achieve financial independence by improving investment and operational efficiency. Subsidies and tariff structures need to be applied with the objectives of achieving equity, affordability, and appropriate level of services for each target group. Broader partnership between government and international development organizations, private sectors, and civil society organizations should be given more space and scope in order to achieve regulatory and resource mobilization challenges. We have to facilitate and strategize to promote traditional knowledge and partnership between different sectors for comprehensive long-term master plans and actions from the perspectives of the SDG6, climate change, biodiversity loss, while also helping cities and community to do more with less, because long-term master plan help building partnerships, drive change, and raise investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar, for setting up the tone of this event. Now I call upon Shri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat ji, Union Minister of Jal Shakti of the Government of India, for his chair address, stressing on the achievements and progress made by India, especially on SDG6.
Namaskar. I extend my heartiest congratulations to the India Water Foundation and all partners associated for organizing this high-level policy dialogue on deciphering interlinkages of SDG6 through multi-sectoral partnerships and global alliance for a sustainable planet. It is a happy coincidence that this program has been organized at a time when our government has completed 9 years in office under the visionary leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji. In these 9 years, India has taken concrete steps to not only significantly improve the lives of its people, but also to combat climate change, achieve sustainable development goals, and preserve the country's rich biodiversity. Needless to say, highest level of importance has been accorded to water and sanitation. The Honorable Prime Minister deserves congratulations and praises, under whose leadership the importance of water in the development of the country was properly underlined for the first time in the history of independent India. The Prime Minister brought various departments related to water under the Jal Shakti Ministry in 2019. This has given greater synergy and coherence to water management in India. And we have committed investment of more than US $150 billion by 2024 in water and sanitation sector. Under Honorable Prime Minister's illustrious leadership, the country is marching forward to improve the quality of life and enhance ease of living of people, especially those residing in the rural areas. The larger goal is to bridge the gap between urban and rural in terms of basic amenities. With this vision, in his first address to Independence Day, that was 15th August 2014, the Prime Minister announced the Swachh Bharat mission to make India an open defecation-free country by 2019. It's a matter of great pride that on 2nd October 2019, the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi ji, India declared itself open defecation free. In those 5 years, more than 100 million toilets were constructed in the country. This is one of the single most transformative program which changed the country forever. However, not resting with the laurels of ODF status, we are sustaining and improving the efforts by solid and liquid waste management in these villages to make them ODF plus. Under these efforts of total sanitation, more than 61% of the villages numbering 3,61,746 have declared themselves ODF plus till date. The result of sanitation campaign have been mind-boggling. A WHO study estimated that the Swachh Bharat mission resulted in averting more than 3 lakhs deaths, mostly of children, caused by diarrhea and protein energy malnutrition. Another study by UNICEF estimated that open defecation free villages in India resulted in saving of US $750 per household per annum, close to $88 billion saving on out-of-pocket healthcare expenditure incurred by households per annum. From the ramparts of Red Forts on 15th August 2019, Honorable Prime Minister announced another life-transforming scheme called Jal Jeevan Mission. Its objective was to provide safe tap water connections to every household by 2024, with focus on quality, quantity, and reliability of safe drinking water. I am happy to inform you that JJM's aim to reach all rural households by 2024 is 6 years well ahead of the Sustainable Development Goals 6 targeted, and could become a model for other developing countries to adopt such practice and achieve their SDG6 target. Today we have already achieved more than 64% of our target by providing tap water connections to more than 124 million households. At the time of launch of JJM, there was 14,020 arsenic and 7,996 fluoride affected habitations in the country. With sustained efforts, safe water is now made available for drinking and cooking in all these affected habitations. Jal Jeevan Mission is being implemented through a bottoms-up approach. For each village, an integrated village action plan which includes drinking water source strengthening, water supply infrastructure, grey water treatment and reuse, regular operations, maintenance and responsibilities is prepared with the help of water supply, public health engineers and local NGO self-help groups, etc. The mission focuses on empowering the local village community by constituting village water and sanitation committees to work as local public utility. The provision of household tap connections in rural areas has ended the drudgery of women and girls who were forced to walk long distances in search of water. This finds reference in the recently released WHO report that providing tap connections to every household would result in significant time saved on water collection, 66.6 million houses each day, especially among women. The precious time saved, especially by women, has provided them an opportunity to undertake economic activities, thereby adding the family income and resulting in reduction in poverty. Safe access to potable water within the household has also improved the health parameters in terms of control of waterborne diseases, as has been confirmed by World Health Organization's report released by Dr. Roderico Offrin, WHO representatives to India. The report confirms that the providing drinking water to all would result in averting almost 400,000 diarrheal deaths with universal coverage of safely managed drinking water in India. Almost 40 million disability adjusted life years dailies from diarrheal diseases is estimated to be averted, resulting in cost saving up to $101 billion. Study by Nobel laureate Dr. Michael Kramer has brought out that nearly 30% infant deaths can be reduced if safe drinking water is made available to families. Our action on water and sanitation has significantly reduced our infant mortality rate, which has come down to 28 in 22 from 42 in 2012, a more rapid rate of reduction in comparison to the last decade. I am proud to say that we have achieved the Sustainable Development Goal of 6.2 in 2019 itself, and committed to achieve goal 6.1 well before the target set by the United Nations of 2030. Today, water is one of the most critical resources threatened by the challenge of climate change, which demands our collective action. India being the most populous country, seventh largest by area and fifth largest economy, but with only 4% of freshwater resources of planet, is acutely aware of its role in addressing the issue. Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, while addressing COP26 at Glasgow in November 21, introduced the concept of life, which stands for lifestyle for environment. Soon this concept was followed into action agenda with the joint launch of Mission Life by United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres along with Prime Minister Modi in October 2022. Water sector is at the heart of Mission Life, which aims to pro-planet people and call for individual as well as community actions apart from government interventions in addressing issues of climate change. While on the track of self-development, we are also aware of our global commitments, and as a chair of G20 for 2023, I urge all participants to come together for collective action and resolve to make Mission Life a success. I would like to conclude by saying that while in the last 9 years we have worked hard in the water and sanitation sector, a big role has been played by the widespread public participation. Our success in big Yes, I would like to conclude by saying that while in the last 9 years we have worked hard in the water and sanitation sector, a big role has been played by the widespread public participation. Our success is big in the sense that we have been able to create a nationwide mass movement regarding water and sanitation. With this experience in mass movement, I can say with certainty that we will have to move forward with a concrete framework in the direction of mass world participation. Come, let us all work together with a resolve to build a strong and beautiful world and fulfill our duties towards world and humanity. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir, for apprising us of what all Government of India is doing, especially in dreams of SDG6. Thank you so much for sparing your time for us. Our next speaker, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, was actually unable to join us due to some technical reason, but immediately within such a short notice, they have sent us a letter, which I would like to share with all of you. I hope you all are able to see the screen. I'll read out the letter to you. Your Excellency Gajendra Singh Shekhawat ji, Dr. Arvind Kumar, Shweta Tyagi, esteemed guests, dear colleagues and friends, access to safe water and sanitation is the first line of defense against the spread of disease and a basic requirement for human health. Yet, underinvestment has left 2 billion people without safe drinking water and 3.6 billion people without adequate sanitation facilities. The consequences of this are deadly. Every year, 1.4 million people die from preventable causes linked to unsafe water and sanitation and inadequate hand hygiene. Globally, we are alarmingly off track to deliver on our commitments to Sustainable Development Goal 6 for water and sanitation. And climate change will only make things worse. Fortunately, we have viable solutions and an historic opportunity to turn them into action. Sustainable public investment, responsible management, clear data, and accountable governance are fundamental to deliver universal access to water and sanitation services. India's Jal Jeevan mission is an unprecedented investment in scaling up household water connections. WHO, in coordination with the Government of India, estimated that 400,000 lives could be saved if the entire population has safe tap water reliably available at home. It is essential that we work together across borders and sectors and direct additional resources towards fragile contexts in the poorest countries. I wish you a productive discussion. Thank you. Our next speaker in this dialogue is Dr. Susan Gardner, Director of the Ecosystems Division, with over Ecosystem Division of the UN Environment Program, with over 3 decades of experience and leading global programs to promote nature-based solutions for sustainable development, including for food system transformations, climate resilience, global biodiversity protection, and disaster risk reduction. Her work on combating ocean pollution included leading the process that achieved a global agreement to negotiate a treaty to end plastic pollution. She was awarded the Gold Medal for Exceptional Services from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the highest national honor award this agency bestows. Ms. Susan Gardner, please.
Excellencies, colleagues, friends, we know the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution have severely impacted the functions of ecosystems, including freshwater along our coasts and in our oceans, as well as their ability to provide vital ecosystem services for food security, for poverty reduction, for overall human well-being. And we know it's time for more holistic, integrated, and evidence-based solutions. It's been truly inspiring to see governments, the UN system, and stakeholders paying closer attention to the cross-cutting, intersectoral nature of water. With nearly 25% of the commitments made under the Water Action Agenda have also are contributing towards the global targets of biodiversity, of hunger and health. We know we need to build on this stage-setting work and forge stronger collaborations across ecosystems boundaries and water governance systems, across the whole of society, whole of government approach, as articulated so powerfully during the UN Water Conference. And we know how to do this. On this important topic, I would like to leave you today with 4 key steps. The first is effective partnership. Programming and alliances across sectors will be critical to progress and accelerate action on SDG6. By uniting our strengths and resources, our perspectives and institutions, we can create a powerful force that will break down barriers, bridge gaps, and drive global change at unprecedented scale. On the plastics front, we've seen the power of partnerships and exchanging best practices on plastic pollution flows in rivers and around the world through, for example, the Global Partnership on Marine Litter, and in collaboration with the UNEP DHI Center on Water and Environment. And we also have seen this work through Global Wastewater Initiative that takes a source-to-sea approach to scale up efforts to tackle wastewater pollution worldwide. Through UNEP's recent MOU with WFP, we've been helping governments and communities, as well as families, on the front lines of climate, food, and water insecurity through upstream investments in nature-based solutions for water and for productive landscape management. Friends, it's evident that SDG6 is highly interdependent and closely interlinked with other SDGs, not to mention specifically SDG 14, Life Below Water, and SDG 15, Life on Land. But beyond simply building partnerships to accelerate progress on these, we need to ensure that these partnerships enhance and maximize tangible multi-stakeholder action on the ground. And this brings me to my second point. Integrated water resource management is a key mechanism to maximize synergies and accelerate concrete action for SDG 6. UNEP, with the Global Water Partnership, is already supporting member states through support programs to accelerate integrated water planning and support member states in achieving the Water Action Agenda. We can harness the power of integrated water resource management for more holistic governance and institutional mechanisms, to promote policy coherence and integration across the typically siloed systems. This means taking into consideration a full systems approach from land-based activities to freshwater ecosystems, to coastal mangroves and coral reefs, all the way out to the high seas. We've seen this work, for example, in the small island development state of Vanuatu, where this approach has been explicitly included in its National Adaptation Plan of Action, as well as its nationally determined contributions, integrating water management across sectors and focal areas, such as forest, gender, health, and to reduce the climate vulnerability of our invaluable urban water supplies. Through this powerful lens, we can continue to connect with other management approaches to help countries truly understand the various opportunities as well as trade-offs of using their precious water resources. And this means identifying upstream and downstream drivers of natural resource degradation, connecting data systems for effective landscape to seascape planning. And it also means including all knowledge, local, indigenous, and scientific, along the water governance continuum. Now, this brings me to my third point. Data and information are key for building resilience and for making the link between SDG 6 and other development issues. We've also seen this, for example, on the health front, where wastewater data has helped identify the emergence of diseases and track community transmission. Certainly, COVID-19 brought renewed attention to wastewater surveillance as a highly effective and important early warning tool. We've also seen this on the disaster front, where early warning systems on hydrometeorological hazards can be targeting forecasts and feed into sector-specific decisions, supporting systems across the board, whether that's for agriculture, disaster risk management, fisheries, or health. And this is just a start. Much more innovation, technology, Earth observations, artificial intelligence needs to be harnessed to improve water-related data quality and quantity to accelerate SDG implementation. So fourth, to do all of this, increased investment is essential to get resources behind freshwater action. The Water Action Agenda includes over 800 commitments. And while this is a step in the right direction, we need much more investment behind these commitments. Globally, the rate of implementation of integrated water resource management urgently needs to double, and investment in nature-based solutions needs to triple just by 2030 if we're going to achieve our sustainable development goals. One way of achieving this is through the system of environmental economic accounting for aquatic ecosystems to make the economic case for investing in resilient ecosystems from source to sea. So in closing, we've seen what can happen when countries, civil society, and the UN work together in the true spirit of multilateralism, as evidenced by the recent adoption of the new BB&J Treaty on marine biodiversity in the high seas. We must also harness the power of our new guiding light, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which sets out a globally agreed pathway for integrated action, including across freshwater and marine habitats. And we also have the direction to drive action from the UN Environment Assembly resolutions on sustainable lake management, nature-based solutions, plastic pollution, as well as nitrogen management. And as we move from the UN 2023 Water Conference into our next UNEA, UN Environment Assembly, next year, let's use these crucial months to further drive ambition and action to support the Water Action Agenda and essential progress on SDG6. UNEP looks forward to working with all of you to help fast-track, increase collaboration and integration across the water continuum from source to sea. We can do this for people, planet, and to achieve all of our SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gardner, especially for telling us why it's important to double the investment for IWRM and triple the investment in NBS, especially by 2030, if we want to achieve the SDGs by that time. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Dr. David Cooper, Acting Executive Secretary of the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. He has more than 30 years of experience in environmental and agricultural science and policy and international negotiations, including more than 20 years with the CBD. He has built strong and productive working relationships with parties in all regions and with partners in civil society, international organizations, and the scientific community. Mr. David Cooper, please.
Excellencies, colleagues, thank you for the opportunity to speak at this high-level policy dialogue on deciphering interlinkages of SDG6 through multi-sector partnerships. SDG6 is about how we manage water for people and the planet. To decipher the interlinkages, we need to understand the role of ecosystems in the water cycle and how biodiversity underpins their functioning. Ecosystems regulate water flow, controlling the quantity of water in various spaces. For example, wetlands, floodplains, upland peatlands, forests and mountain ecosystems retain water and control downstream flows. These same ecosystems filter water and remove excess nutrients, improving the quality of surface water and groundwater resources on which people rely. And they are also important in regulating local and regional weather patterns through evapotranspiration, feeding precipitation. But right now, generally speaking, we are degrading and destroying these systems. We are draining wetlands, straightening rivers, cutting down forests, polluting waterways, and over-abstracting groundwater. The effects have serious consequences for people and planet. Freshwater biodiversity is the most threatened of all. This destruction, combined with climate change, is producing stronger and more frequent storms, floods, and droughts, all effects mediated through the water cycle. So we are simultaneously facing crises of biodiversity loss, climate change, and the misuse of water. These are interlocked into a downward vicious spiral. Colleagues, use of nature-based solutions, ecosystem-based approaches, or green infrastructure can help us to reverse this trend, to turn it round, to provide an upward virtuous cycle. The Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, adopted by the parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity last December, provides a comprehensive plan to do this. It has ambitious goals and targets for actions to halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity. It includes targets that address the drivers of biodiversity loss and ecosystem degradation, such as land use change and pollution. It includes targets to protect 30% of inland waters and to restore 30% of degraded ecosystems and to manage agricultural ecosystems sustainably. More broadly, the framework calls for the multiple values of biodiversity, including water-related values, to be integrated into policy and planning decisions across all government ministries, economic sectors, and all facets of society. These actions must be taken while ensuring the full and effective participation of Indigenous peoples and local communities, respecting their rights, and in a gender-responsive way. In short, a whole of government, whole of society approach is needed. Colleagues, the crises of biodiversity, climate, and water all demand action this decade, the UN Decade for Action. The successful implementation of both the Water Action Agenda and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework is essential to the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal 6 and of all the Sustainable Development Goals. So they must go hand in hand. We need to reach beyond our constituencies and engage all productive sectors, consumers, and stakeholders. Let's work together to put nature on a path to recovery by 2030 for people and the planet. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Cooper, for making us understand the importance of the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework and how it has to be integrated and collaborated with every policy framework that countries are making. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Dr. Rajan Sudesh Ratna, a PhD in economics from Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, New Delhi, MPhil in Environmental Science from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and done an executive program on trade policy and negotiations from Harvard University, Boston. He is the deputy head of the UNESCAPE SSWA office in India, presently working in New Delhi since August 2018 and leading research, policy advisory, and capacity building on helping countries accelerate progress towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Dr. Ratna, the floor is yours, please. Dr. Ratna may have had some technical problem, networking issue. He was actually there in Devariya, and from there he was joining. I'm sure he'll join us a little later. So for the time being, I'll request Mr. Eddie Moores. Dr. Eddie Moores, Director of IHE Delft Institute of Water Education. He was head of the research team, Climate Change and Adaptive Land and Water Management at Wageningen Environmental Research. He is also Professor of Water and Climate at the VU University, Amsterdam. Eddie Moores specialized in the research of climate change mitigation and adaptation. Earlier in his career, he worked for the World Meteorological Organization in Africa and in the Caribbean. Mr. Eddie Moores, please.
I'm Eddie Moores, I'm Rector of IHE Delft, and I have the honor to say a few words to you about partnerships. We as IHE Delft consider partnerships as a very important basic principle of our institutions because we strongly believe in the necessity of this collaboration. Just to give you a few examples why those partnerships are required and especially why the partnerships are not only within the water sector but also outside of the water sector. As you may all know, the UN Secretary General in 2020 already announced that if we ever want to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, it's of key importance that we achieve SDG6, the Water Sustainable Development Goal. Because if we don't manage to achieve that Sustainable Development Goal, it will become rather difficult to also achieve goals like food production, poverty, energy, you name them. Almost all of the SDGs are strongly linked to water. Now, to give you a couple of easy examples, if you look at the water itself, the water sector already knows this actually. Because if you look at the multi-purpose dams, it's clear that those dams are there for flood protection, but they're also there actually for irrigation purposes. They are there for energy use. If you only leave it to one of the three to manage the dam, you will never get the best out of the availability that you have and the opportunity that you have to use the dam. So you need this collaboration between three different sectors there already to determine what the best use of this reservoir is. Another clear example is actually when you are looking at groundwater. In countries like the Netherlands, but also in other countries with high groundwater levels, the management of the level of the groundwater will determine how you can use the land. Do you need it for farming? Your groundwater table has to be somewhat low. If you need it for environment, especially for wetland, then you need a high groundwater table. If you have an old city that's based on wooden poles, again, you will need a high water level and you need a very constant water level that's not changing too much in the season. So again, you see that there is a need to collaborate between the different sectors to achieve the goals that you would like to have. Now, I think that with the nexus, water, energy, food and environment, we could approach some of them. But it's not only about this nexus. It's also about the fact that if we want to make a next step, and again I would like to refer to what the Secretary General said, is if we want to step forward with SDG6, we need an accelerator framework that was proposed by UN Water. This framework identifies 5 pillars, one of them being finance, another data, another governments, another innovations, and another capacity development. Again, showing that not only between different disciplines and different sectors, but also cross-cutting through your society, you will need this collaboration to make the steps that are required. I think if you look at successful large collaborations in there, I would like to name the ozone layer. I think that with the CFCs that were threatening actually the ozone layer a couple of decades ago, an agreement was reached that helped us to have the present situation, which is a quite healthy situation for the ozone layer, and by that also for health of human mankind. Another example, again in the water sector, is the collaboration that has been achieved in the Rhine Basin, but also in other river basins, where there is a collaboration over national borders. And you get this international collaboration where you look at the water quality, you look at the water availability, you look at transportation, and again, different sectors are involved to have this need, this common, I think, advantage that you may have in a catchment area where you can use the collaboration to make a next step. Now, looking at what we need for that, and finance is often important, I do think that the water sector requires a next development in there, because the water sector and the water managers are not always that well prepared and that well set actually to create and define what is sometimes called by the investment sector a bankable project. So I think training and educating the water sector how you can come up with bankable projects is a requirement to assure that the investments that are sometimes possible will also enter within the water sector. I think that's relatively easy if you're talking about infrastructural investments, but if you're talking about the other needs that are there, and I'm now speaking about maintenance and operation, but also how you can get investments in rural areas where it's often not about big centralized systems, but it's about small investments, it becomes much more complicated. There, I think we should work together in the water sector, as well as in the financing sector, how we can define new methods, how we can invest also under such conditions. And I think there's a few things I think is super important is that capacity development is also a difficult one to invest in. I think the best investment you can do if you look at society is in capacity development. Sometimes, if you just look at the water sector, it's a little bit more difficult because the water sector is very specific, and it's not always sure that the investment in capacity in the water sector will also remain in the water sector, but it will always remain in your society. So in the long term, you always get a return on investment in capacity development. More important for me is that capacity development for me is the one way how you can, in the best way, also speed up the innovations and the changes that you require. And that means also that in this capacity development, you're talking and discussing about new partnerships, new ways about collaborating, inviting the water sector to step out of their silo, move forward, reach out to the other sectors, ask them about what their objectives are, and then advise them about what is possible, but also where the limitations are, and see how you can help those other sectors in achieving their goals while maintaining or even improving the situations of the water sector. Thank you very much that I was allowed to say a few words to you, and I hope to work together with you in partnerships to achieve SDG6, but also all the other development goals that are so important for the community and society as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Eddie Morse, for your invitation to partner with IHE Delft Institute of Water Education and India Water Foundation, and our other partners would be happy to do so. Our next speaker is Mr. Katsuo Matsumoto, Director General, Infrastructure Engineering Department, Japan International Cooperation Agency. He has been the Chief Representative, JICA India Office from June 2018 to August 2021. Previous to this, Mr. Matsumoto was engaged in several flagship development projects in the South Asian region. He has worked for the official development assistance projects in ASEAN and the South Asian countries, including regional corridor projects for the past 30 years. Mr. Matsumoto, I can make you the host, and then you will be able to share the presentation yourself as well. Or if you wish, I can share it from my side, however you want it. Should I make you the host?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So, distinguished speakers, panelists, and the colleagues, good evening and namaskar. Thank you for inviting me today. And I believe that the Sueda-san, can you show my materials? You cannot? Okay, let me start.
Mr. Matsumoto, you can share your presentation from your screen only because I have made you the host.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you see?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, we JICA engaged in development cooperation in more than 100 countries to achieve the international development goals such as SDGs. So today, I'd like to briefly share our views on water and development. Firstly, let me emphasize that by bird's eye views and co-creation are important perspectives when working with partner countries. As well known, providing clean water not only brings health to the people, but also creates social impact. For example, if the water supply system is improved, women will save the time when they go to the fetch water, which can be used for the studying or working. In addition, the participation of women in water use associations contribute to the advancement of women's status. So it is important to include the multiple component in a single water project from these perspectives. Therefore, it is clear that the supply of the clean water will affect the other SDG goals, and we need to formulate a project from such overarching perspectives. Secondly, let me stress the importance of various stakeholders' participation in water project. These include state government that provide public works, non-profitable organizations that conduct awareness-raising activities, universities and research institutes that study water issues, social enterprises that implement bridge water supply projects through a business approach, and others. And there's no doubt that these collective actions will have a great impact. This is where international organizations and bilateral aid agency can get involved to provide financial and technical cooperation. I believe that international organization and bilateral aid agency should play the role of such a hub function more and more to make things easier of collective cooperation. So thirdly, the transfer of technology and know-how requires not only development of new equipment, but also steady efforts to strengthen operation and maintenance capabilities, including addressing non-revenue water. Bilateral aid agency have a wealth of the experiences in their home countries in the field, and it can transfer the various types of the skill and know-how of the local government. For this reason, it is really necessary for bilateral aid agency to build a cooperative framework with central ministries, local government, and private companies in their countries and in the partner countries. And for your information, in order to strengthen these three matters, the Japanese government last month revised the National Development Cooperation Framework. The aim is to achieve more effective and strategic cooperation under the current international situation. In the new charter, it places greater emphasis on co-creation and the proactiveness to deal with the development issues than ever before. I believe that this approach is necessary to achieve the SDG more effectively and efficiently. I look forward to continuing to work with all participants today in implementing our project in developing countries. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Matsumoto. Can you please make me the host again? Mr. Matsumoto, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, can you make me the host again?
Yes.
Do you know it, how to do it, or should I tell you? There are three dots where my video is. There are three dots at the right-hand side corner. You just click on that. Have you done it? Our next speaker is Mr. Mark Smith, Director General EME, who brings more than 25 years of research and program management experience in water resources, agriculture, climate, and sustainability. He was formerly Director of the Global Water Program at the International Union for Conservation of Nature, where he led innovative multi-regional programs in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, addressing river basin management, transboundary cooperation, and water governance, climate change adaptation, and nature-based solutions. He has a PhD in ecology and resource management from the University of Edinburgh and a master's in climatology from the University of Guelph. Mr. Smith, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Shweta, and thank you also to the India Water Foundation and to Dr. Kumar for convening this dialogue this afternoon. And it's a real honored to have been asked to join you. This event aims to capture a set of key messages on the critical importance of multi-stakeholder partnerships, and we've heard much input on that so far. Multi-stakeholder partnerships for SDG6 and the interlinked SDGs. I will share a set of key messages from IMI. IMI is the International Water Management Institute. We're an international research for development organization that works on research, innovation, and scaling for sustainable and climate resilient solutions for water security. Our headquarters are in Sri Lanka, which is where I'm speaking to you from, and we have offices in 14 countries in Asia and Africa. So first on partnerships. Like many interdisciplinary fields, in particular, water systems science is often fragmented, meaning that research and knowledge in this domain are spread across multiple disciplines, institutions, and stakeholders, so that progress is held back by disciplinary boundaries, by gaps in data, by disconnections in information sharing, by institutional fragmentation and lack of stakeholder engagement, by conflicting interests, competing interests, and also the complexity of local contexts. And these all make it very challenging to effectively address the targets for SDG6. And this is why partnerships and alliances are so critical across sectors. Partners and alliances across sectors are so critical, they're so crucial. We need collective action to navigate the complexity of water, SDG6 and its interdependencies. For this reason, at the International Water Management Institute, we aim to work across interdependencies between the SDGs and use interdisciplinary approaches and work in partnerships at local, regional, and national levels. An example of this is in South Asia. We lead a project called the Solar Irrigation for Agricultural Resilience Project. And here we contribute climate resilient, gender equitable, and socially inclusive livelihoods by supporting government efforts to promote the use of solar irrigation pumps in the region, in South Asia. Our researchers, our teams in the region, we partner with water and energy utilities, we partner with local agricultural councils and research institutes to make local policies more responsive to the needs of farmers, to the needs of women, to the needs of marginalized communities in solar irrigation subsidy programs. And as a result, the project is democratizing, in effect. It's democratizing the use of solar-powered irrigation pumps and making their use more financially viable, while at the same time contributing to SDG6, but also SDGs 1, 2, 5, 7, 10, 13, and so on, because of those interdependencies. So partnerships are vital, but they depend on dialogue. Threats to water security for communities and countries and river basins are rapidly expanding. We're all aware of that. But research fragmentation, weak institutions, and siloed interventions are slowing our progress. Dialogue and partnership are key to overcoming this. Indeed, this is why today we have all joined this high-level policy dialogue. We all want to find synergies within and beyond water systems, identify shared goals, and foster collaboration based on mutual interests and trust amongst us all. At IMI, we value dialogue. We value the process of dialogue. And that's why in 2022, we launched an initiative called the Transformative Futures for Water Security. This was a dialogue process that we ran in the lead up to the UN 2023 Water Conference that took place, of course, this March. We convened representatives from youth networks, national and local governments, water user and advocacy groups, research and academia, and the private sector. And we worked together to identify what we called high ambition collective actions that would create strong alignment and convergence of research, policy, business, and on-the-ground implementation to deliver water security. We used a unique process of 8 online South-South dialogues across regions from Southeast Asia through to Latin America, as well as a global conference that we held in Cape Town in South Africa in February of 2023. And based on the contributions of more than 1,000 people and 400 organizations across that process, from within the water sector and beyond the water sector, participants developed a set of what we called 8 high ambition missions for science-based action on water security. These 8 missions represent stakeholder-driven priorities for transforming water systems, for building that future of water security that that ambition that we all share. These missions, they cover, for example, building farmers' resilience to climate change and water risks, delivering sustainable, stakeholder-driven water services. They cover circularity in water management. They cover future-ready, built and ecological infrastructure. There are also a set of enabling missions for overcoming data and information barriers, delivering good water governance, adapting to future water regimes and risks, and decision-making for water that integrates the full range of values of water and objectives across sectors. These are complemented by a set of systemic levers, so common change strategies across the missions, such as gender equality, financing, and capacity development, and so on. What we realized during this process, during the dialogue, and that we're committed to pursuing through the Water Action Agenda, what we realized is that this mission-driven agenda can be a catalyst for convergence of partnerships and alliances, including across sectors, on collective action. So a mission-driven agenda provides a common framework of goals around which all actors can converge. And this includes integration and application of knowledge held by Indigenous groups and marginalized communities, as is emphasized in the mission dedicated to making water decisions fit for the future by integrating the full values of water. And as, for example, we aim to do in Nepal with work that IMI leads there to promote inclusive practices within water user associations that recognize that women bear the responsibility of managing irrigation in the absence of men who have migrated for economic opportunities. So ensuring that water decisions integrate all knowledges. Now, of course, delivering and accelerating SDG6 requires also a focus on scaling from local to national and regional levels. At IMI, we work intensively on developing and applying innovative mechanisms to ensure that our solutions are adaptable and scalable. We develop multi-stakeholder platforms, comprehensive water management plans, and participatory approaches to integrate the diverse perspectives that you need for scaling of water solutions. Our research informs policy and fosters cross-sectoral collaboration. We help to bring together partnerships that include the private sector. We prioritize knowledge sharing and capacity building. And our integrated approaches are supported by sustainable financing strategies and help to catalyze sustainable financing strategies. And that's the last couple of things that I wanted to say before I finish. Because in some ways, it's this latter point, sustainable financing, that is the elephant in the room. It's what's key to moving ahead with SDG6, with the interdependencies across the SDGs. But it's also a huge opportunity to create change. Finance is a critical lever in helping us to create opportunities for change. We know that trillions of dollars are required to achieve universal access to safe and affordable drinking water and to develop infrastructure. But despite the evidence that there is of investment needs, the fragmentation of effort, competing priorities, and limited understanding of the value of water hold back finance and investment for water. So a key question for us and a key question for this high-level dialogue, given the intersectoral nature of water and SDG6, is whether in fact there's a golden opportunity to change this, to change what holds back sustainable financing of water. By instead of searching for sectoral investment in water, we recognize and leverage the interdependencies that exist across the SDGs to align water relevant investments across sectors. So use partnerships and to catalyze convergence of water investments in food, health, water-related investments in food, health, energy, climate, and so on. And so drive outcomes for SDG6. So leverage those very interdependencies that we're talking about today to drive outcomes, drive investment, and drive outcomes for SDG6. I think that such an approach would mean, in effect, putting our money where our mouth is in integrating water considerations into broader societal goals and fostering the systemic changes for sustainable development that are so crucial. Our opportunity then is to use water as the blue thread that weaves every aspect of sustainable development and the interdependencies of the SDGs, based on convergence around shared ambitions, as our dialogue, as our transformative futures dialogue showed, based on convergence around shared ambitions for collective action to create the water secure world of the future that is indispensable for the SDGs. I trust, therefore, that this high-level policy dialogue is going to be of high value to us all in gathering ideas and insights on the pathways that we need to tackle some of these collective action problems, these multi-stakeholder partnerships problems, multi-sectoral partnership challenges and opportunities that we have in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for giving us the messages of IMI and what all tremendous work IMI is doing, especially in driving and accelerating the SDG6 agenda further. Thank you so much. And I will be coming back to Mr. Matsumoto and Mark at the end of the discussion as well for your closing comments on this. Our next speaker is Mr. Satya S. Tripathi, who is Secretary General of the Global Alliance for Sustainable Planet, a development economist, lawyer, and changemaker with over 40 years of varied experience. Mr. Tripathi is also the Chancellor of Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences and Senior Distinguished Fellow on Innovative Finance at the World Agroforestry Center. He has served with the UN for more than 2 decades in key positions and was most recently the UN Assistant Secretary General, Head of New York Office at UN Environment and Secretary of the UN Environment Management Group. Mr. Tripathi, please.
Greetings from New York. And I want to start by congratulating Dr. Kumar and his team of dedicated colleagues at the India Water Foundation for organizing a conversation around such a very important subject, that is deciphering interlinkages of SDG6 through multi-sector partnerships. Now, of course, you'll be hearing from many panelists that are experts on this subject, but I want to focus on 3 very significant issues that are very important to consider. The first is, of course, the fact that SDG6 is, it basically touches upon all the 17 SDGs. It is highly interdependent and it's closely interlinked with all the other SDGs. And that is exactly why it is so important to focus not just on the technical aspects of how we can make the water supply systems much more efficient, reduce wastage, and do whatever we can by using the tools of modern technology to both conserve water while at the same time making it available to the most underprivileged segments of the society. And of course, when we talk about underprivileged segments, we think of people, but I'm also talking about broadening that understanding and look at countries that are unable to provide access to water for a large segment of their population. So while even within the most developed countries, there are underserved segments, but if you look at the whole community of countries, the member nations of the UN, you will find numerous countries that are unable to provide basic access to water for a large segment of the population. Then, of course, there is the other thing that we need to really value, which is traditional knowledge. In our efforts to harness the power of modern technology, sometimes we forget that some of the most rudimentary understanding of conserving water that has been passed on through tens of generations has been lost. And then so accessing that, understanding that, and harnessing the power of that in terms of both strengthening capacities and enhancing and increasing the effectiveness of ongoing partnerships is extremely important. And then, of course, the third thing I would like to focus on is sustainable financing. Private sector needs to be engaged, but while being mindful of the fact that the private sector has not really been very honorable, if I may use that term, in most cases. There are numerous examples where the private sector has stepped in in the garb of managing water much more effectively, and the next thing you know, the water is being siphoned off, and I'm referring to bottled water, to more privileged communities that can afford and pay for it, while local communities are left high and dry. So sustainable finance, yes, its power must be harnessed, and public-private partnerships are extremely important in harnessing this rare resource that is becoming rarer by the day thanks to the challenge of climate change and environmental degradation, but it should be focused on making it available to local communities with the minimal amount of wastage and the maximum amount of usage in support of these communities. And once, of course, that has been done, if there is surplus water, that can certainly be used for serving the interests of a business, because private finance is predicated on the fact that it should make money to be able to serve a greater good. So, but if the entire purpose is to make money at the cost of society, and what is more popularly known as public losses and private profits, so that certainly does not work. So these are three things I wanted to highlight. And of course, before closing, I would like to refer to the most recent publication of the UN World Water Development Report 2023, where some of these issues have been very strongly highlighted. And then, the fact that 26% of the world's population did not have access to safely managed drinking water, while 46% lacked access to safely managed sanitation, speaks volumes of the distance we have to travel before everybody has access to clean water and sanitation. Yes, a lot of the, if you look at the macro picture, we have a lot of water resources that should be sufficient to serve the world community. But the challenge is that countries with very small populations have access to large amounts of fresh water. Canada is a case in point. And there are other countries as well. And countries like India are water starved and water stressed, thanks to the large population of 1.4 billion people. And while the country is well endowed with a lot of sources of fresh water, especially I'm talking about the Himalayan cryosphere, that is a great resource in terms of fresh water. But at the same time, the big picture hides the small picture, which is that water is a scarce resource in most parts of the country, and that is getting worse with every passing day, thanks to, again, and as I mentioned earlier, the challenge of climate change and environmental degradation. And then lastly, public-private partnerships has been very strongly highlighted in the report, but not much has happened in this particular space. While public-private partnerships have worked well in other areas, but especially in terms of access to underprivileged communities and water conservation in a big way, it's still lacking. And of course, despite their expertise and experience and willingness to contribute, indigenous communities have been frequently marginalized in decision-making processes related to the water crisis, and they have been consistently denied their right to access and management of clean water. While they can be actually, if we were to provide them the respect and dignity they deserve, they can be partners and agents for change, because their strength is in the use of traditional knowledge and solutions to address water-related crises that can be implemented as both mitigation and adaptation strategies in a local context. So with that, I would close by again thanking the fellow panelists for their views and insights in this matter, and also, more importantly, the team at India Water Foundation for organizing this very important conversation. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Tripathi, for your remarks and making us understand how a four-pronged approach is very necessary for accelerating SDG6 and how important the linkages and multi-sector partnerships are to achieving this agenda. Our next speaker is Mr. Vishwaranjan Sinha, Program Officer, Water and Wetlands, South Asia, IUC and Asia Regional Office in Bangkok. With more than 12 years of experience working on regional water governance issues in the Ganges, Brahmaputra, Meghna, and the Mekong region. Mr. Vishwaranjan Sinha, please.
Thank you very much, Shweta, and really great to be participating in this very important high-level dialogue, and great to be in the team of very esteemed speaker. And just want to share that Marcus Smith is here, and he's one of our mentor and ex-IUC, and a lot of what we are going to present today has its origin in the times when Mark was with IUCN. So getting back to the topic of deciphering interlinkages for SDG6, I would like to speak about what is the scale at which we need to work to decipher. So what is it which is required? So a systems approach, I think, is the starting point when we are embarking upon the journey of deciphering those linkages in the water sector. And when we talk about systems approach, river basin provides a good systems of interconnected water and ecosystem services. Especially when we talk about river basin, there is a special category of river basins, which is the shared river basin or transboundary river basins, which has more than, which actually is basically provides water to more than 40% of the population, and there are more than 150 of those shared river basins across the world. So this shared river basins include, shared wetlands, groundwater, and we have seen that SDG6 target 5 call for the global community to implement integrated water resource management in all the river basins, including those shared river basins. So because shared river basin is complex, when we talk about deciphering interlinkages, it is shared by 2 different countries. It is under different management system. It's important to look at these basins. Globally, there are more than 150 shared river basin. In case of Asia, the Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna, Mekong, these are all examples of shared river basin. And what is happening recently is that with the increasing growth and development, these shared river basins are under increasing stress. And how we are managing and deciphering interlinkages and acting on them is going to determine the peace and security in the Asia region. So this is central to the peace and security in our region. We have to first understand also the values of these transboundary river system, specifically talking about Asia. It is one of the world's home to world's greatest rivers, including Salween River, which is shared by China, Myanmar, and Thailand, which is also recognized as the 7th longest free-flowing river of the world. Then there is a Meghna River basin shared between Bangladesh and India. Then we have the world's largest freshwater lake, not world's largest, Asia's largest freshwater lake, Tonle Sap, which also is fed by the Mekong system, which is shared between more than 7 countries. These river systems are important for the food production. If you look at Ganga Brahmaputra Meghna system, it supports world's largest inland fisheries, and it's important for the food security. At least 30 to 40 million people in India and Bangladesh depend on this. So clearly, as this topic suggests, SDG6 or achieving SDG6 is central to achieving other targets, but these are threatened. Most of the wetlands in these river basins we are losing them. Hydropower are being developed without the understanding of the impact on the system, especially these shared river systems. When you have stakeholders in two different countries, it becomes really difficult to coordinate between them. Then climate change, and one of the important factors we see is the weak cooperation frameworks for the management of these basins across Asia. So when we talk about interlinkages, and so when we understand those interlinkages and try to implement some action, we need cooperation framework, we need institutions. So these are some of the threats actually that we need to address going forward. So in this context, I would like to just share some thoughts and learnings from our global bridge program, Building River Dialogue and Governance, which is being implemented in more than 15 transboundary river basins across Asia, Africa, and Caribbean. So I will just be sharing the methodology that we apply and how we try to move from not just deciphering interlinkages, but to go beyond that and try to implement actions. So this the goal of this bridge program is poverty alleviation, nature conservation, and economic growth are enhanced in the basins through sustainable management and governance of the transboundary water resources through application of water diplomacy. As a program, I mean, it's interesting. It's more than a 10-year-old program, but we are still following a very set framework of how we understand interlinkages, how we work with the stakeholders to build their partnerships and actions on the ground. So there are four actually critical elements of this whole program of shared river governance, how we are promoting, facilitating integrated water resource management in the shared river basins. So the first component that we focus on is demonstration. So when you talk about a shared river basin, even if you understand linkages, partnerships, stakeholder engagements becomes very difficult. So we try to work at demonstration. So how we can make operational at the basin level through dialogue, capacity building, trust building. One example is we worked with the civil society organizations in the Ganga Brahmaputra Meghna basin, and we demonstrated that how the different civil society organizations from 4 different countries can come together and develop a joint vision. So in 2018, actually, we published through this network of more than 30 civil society organizations from different countries, a vision for sustainable development and cooperation in the Ganga Brahmaputra Meghna basin. So demonstrating how in different ways stakeholders can work together is very important when we are talking about deciphering linkages or implementation of SDG6. The second component is learning. So using capacity building and engagement of multiple stakeholders to initiate joint research, understand benefit sharing, what kind of ecosystem enhancement opportunities are there. So working together with them. The third component is dialogue and consensus building. So we talk about nexus, but energy, water, food nexus. But even when we understand nexus, it's very important to achieve actions on the ground. There is consensus among the stakeholders. So it's very important that we continue a dialogue process and demonstrate how consensus could be developed, and how this consensus actually leads to some kind of agreement between different stakeholders to and implement certain actions to solve certain societal challenge. And finally, the fourth component is about leadership development. So working with young youth population, working with women, empowering them, engaging them in the dialogue process, and building a network of champions, water champions, who could actually mobilize cooperation and linkages between different stakeholders, not just at the local, but at the transboundary level. So this is what I wanted to share with you, that it's important when we are talking about deciphering interlinkages that we work with a systems approach, work at different levels, because then we are talking about integrated water resource management. So that requires working with a stakeholder from the basin to the national to the local level. So what kind of mechanisms we can evolve to do that, and also keeping in mind the significance of the shared river basins in Asia and globally, considering the increasing stress they are under, and that could be further accentuated in the absence of a clear framework and institution to manage these shared river basins. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Vishwa, for your comments and for making us understand the water, energy, food nexus, how and why it's important for achieving these goals. I will come back to you in a while. Dr. Kumar, any closing comments?
Yes. Undoubtedly, governments and agencies like UNEP, WHO, and other agencies who participate have a strong commitment to the SDG. But it's the people participation that makes all the difference. Engagement with partners organization is vital for a tangible result on the ground, and it is not just a top-down approach, but also bottom-up approach by sensitizing, incentivizing, galvanizing stakeholders. We have to bring the community, civil society, and the state agencies together for integrated cross-sectoral participation through cooperation, coordination, convergence. With all these tremendous efforts, a little more nudge is needed to invest in educate infrastructure, adopt a circularity approach, elicit international cooperation to encourage efficiency, support treatment, technologies, and protect and restore water-related ecosystems. I strongly feel that at this critical juncture, there is a dire need for redesign sectoral interventions. We should, as Dr. Vishwa said, revise our ecosystems. So we have to understand our basin approach, ecosystem approach, and optimize financing, improve data information, enhanced capacity, innovations, and enhanced governance. When all of it come together, it's a transversity approach. So now these accelerators need to be filled with actions by all actors and together with the other sectors for complete water security.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar, for your comments. Mr. Katsuo Matsumoto, any comments, closing comments from your side, especially the kind of work that JICA is doing along with the government of India and other countries in the region in the Asia Pacific?
Yeah, well, so today I'm very glad to hear a lot of the opinions from the various type of the speakers. And I recognize again that the corrective action should be really necessary and strengthened. And the word of the corrective action is very, very easy. But in order to realize this matter, I believe that somebody, someone like organization like say India Water Foundation should play the important role to connect the almost every players together. Yeah, and it means that we need a facilitator. Yeah, and the government organization, including such kind of international organization, are sometimes selfish. I mean, we have our own the way and the policy, and sometimes we don't see the such kind of like a bottom-up approach so well. In that case, somebody should notice us about the importance. How did the people there think about this matter? Yeah, and the Japanese government recently emphasized about the concept of the human security. So it means that the human is first. Yeah, from the view of the human, the clean water is kind of just a one shot to improve their life. and the like water supply, about electricity supply, health, well, the medical support, and so on, should be linked together for the human. Yeah, so I believe that India has a great potential to achieve this one. Yeah, so again, that I really expect the in the Water Foundation to play this critical role. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Matsumoto, for your wonderful comments and praising India Water Foundation. Thank you so much. Mark, any closing comments, or you would like to elaborate on something?
Sorry, I'm struggling with my mouse. There we go. There we go. Great.
Yes, you'd like to elaborate on something, or any, whatever, any closing comments from you, please?
Certainly, Shweta, thank you. And thank you. The contributions that we've heard, both in person and on video, have been very interesting. And I think help frame the problem that we have in front of us in terms of how to develop effective policy frameworks and policy interventions for such a complex problem as water. You know, water is such a simple substance, but its management and how we resolve water problems at scale is very complex. And Vishwa spoke very eloquently about the complexity of water and the importance of program development. And as I'm grateful to him acknowledging my contributions to the Bridge program that he spoke about. In program development, how we need to be very mindful of how we work with complexity and with systems. And the Bridge program that Vishwa spoke about is a great example of how to work with complexity tools to help us solve water problems. But I feel like there's a gap now between taking the steps from the kinds of lessons that we have in relation to working with complex water challenges and translating those into policy and policy frameworks and policy that stakeholders and governments can engage with in very effective ways at local through to national and regional and river basin levels. So how do we, the challenge may be, how do we take the kinds of reflections and contributions that we've heard today, how do we translate those into simpler, manageable policy frameworks that empower people, empower governments to work with complexity? I actually think that there are good models around for how we work with complexity. Bridge program is one, but that challenge is how do we make that really digestible for policymakers and for the ways that policy works in governments. And as we do that, getting back to the theme of this session, recognizing that there are untapped opportunities in working with policy in this context if we do a better job of working across sectors, and we do a better job of understanding how other sectors, food, land, energy, nature conservation we've heard about today, et cetera, how they are working with water and leverage what other sectors are doing in terms of delivering water outcomes, and working with those other sectors to help them understand their gaps and how we can, as water specialists, how we can contribute to them closing those gaps at the sectoral level. And I'll leave with a prime example of that is water in agriculture, right? Agriculture uses 70% of water. We all know those statistics. It's never 70% of the conversations that we have. It's never 70% of the kinds of prescriptions that we like to talk about. So how do we bring that sector better into these kinds of conversations so that we can help them close the gaps and then leverage what they are doing to help us deliver water outcomes. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark, for bringing to our attention, especially the READ program that Vishwa has been talking about and your contribution to that. Thank you so much. Vishwa, any closing comments you'd like to elaborate on something? Than what you had already spoken about?
Nothing to elaborate. I think already we had very great speakers speaking about the issue. The only thing is that sometimes we, when we talk about interlinkages, we are lost in the scale. That what is the scale at which we should be talking interlinkages? So it's important to keep that in mind, and a basin approach provides that scale. So working with a river basin approach is important when we are talking about SDG6. And also, I think many stakeholders here have highlighted the need for financing, and especially in the case of nature-based solution. What we see is that frameworks, policies, they are coming up. Of course, I mean, there is a lot of improvement, as Mark indicated. We need very clear and simple frameworks. But even when they exist, there is a big challenge at the implementation level. That's what we see. And the need to work on capacity building or at the last mile connectivity of sorts. So there could be a lot of policy, a lot of understanding of how nexus or interlinkages are impacting us, but unless we have some actionable plan, which is supported by local stakeholders, local government initiatives, we cannot achieve our target. Thank you.
Of course, implementation is always a big challenge which all of us face while taking a policy down, at grassroots. And thanks for sharing this perspective with us. Now I'll select one question from the chat box that has been directed to Mr. Matsumoto. Although he has already spoken, given an answer to that question, yet I would invite him if he wants to elaborate on something. The question is from Raj Nandini, co-convener Swachh Bharat Mission Odisha. She's saying that in my birth state and district of Cuttack, Odisha, JICA has undertaken building integrated infrastructure and sewage management, underground cabling of transmissions, and so forth for the past 10 years now. She has been a co-convener of Swachh Bharat Mission at Cuttack and would like cooperation in the works pursued by her. So, although Mr. Matsumoto, you've answered here, would you like to elaborate on the same a little bit?
Yeah, I did answer by chat. Yeah, and I'm now in Tokyo. So if necessary, I can introduce the colleagues in Delhi office. Yeah. So basically, such kind of a comment is very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matsumoto. And I would request my panelists here, Mr. Matsumoto, Mark, Vishwa, to please open your cameras so that we can have a screenshot of all the speakers together here. Thank you so much. Let's say cheese. Thank you. And with this, I would be closing my session. And after listening to all the esteemed speakers, what I gather from this dialogue is that we need to adopt and promote a water systems partnership to overcome challenges to solutions that are beneficial for all. The scope and ambition of the 2030 agenda and the already existing financing gap within the water sector demand more than traditional public finance and ODA. They require collective and inclusive efforts from governments, banks, the private sector, philanthropy, as well as civil society, for which a stable regulatory institution and policy environment is essential. Water-related data and information are critical to understand the social, economic, and environmental demands and complexity of water challenges, and to effectively target measures and funding. Only with capacities to effectively collect, analyze, and share data-informed decisions and policies, planning, and investments can translate data to action. to invest and support institutions to operate fit for purpose water and sanitation monitoring systems based on local needs and capacities, which are able to collect qualitative, accessible, timely, and reliable gender disaggregated data as the basis for decision making and public information. They need to consider interdependencies and co-benefits with other sectors in planning, policy making, and action requires capacity knowledge and the willingness to overcome sector and institutional boundaries. Research and development, innovative, technical, as well as financial solutions, but also new inclusive governance and circular business models are a must when working towards accelerated cross-sectoral implementation of SDG6. A transnational and inclusive mindset for the continuous innovative incorporates the cultural value of water. Traditional and indigenous peoples' knowledge is needed just as modern technologies and digitalization. While SDG6 is an essential enabler of the 2030 agenda, water issues suffer from lack of visibility in international processes. Water governance from the local to the global level is highly fragmented, with roles and responsibilities for closely linked water aspects assigned to different entities. Multi-sector and multi-stakeholder approaches are needed at the systemic level to optimize the use of scarce resources, accounting for the maximization of co-benefits and minimization of trade-offs, to manage conflicting and cross-sectoral interests and to ensure accountability. Thank you, dignitaries, India Water Foundation and its partners, UNEP, CBD, UNESCAPE, IHE Delft Institute of Water Education, JICA and IUCN are grateful to you for taking out time from your extremely busy schedule for us and gracing this event. We are heartily thankful to all of you and especially my online audience who has been joining us from all over the world from their different time zones. Thank you so much. With this, I end my session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a nice